Ladies, we've been trained to equate love with attention. We've been conditioned to think that if a man loves you, he'll chase you, call you, check up on you, and post you all over his social media. But can I disrupt that narrative for a moment? Can I speak to the women who are feeling confused because the one who claimed to care suddenly pulled back, went quiet, or even disappeared? Not every silence is rejection, and not every distance is a dismissal. Sometimes a man's absence isn't a sign of disinterest. It's a revelation of inner conflict. Sometimes it's not that he doesn't love you, but that love is exposing parts of him he's not ready to deal with. See, when love becomes a mirror, it reflects what's broken, unhealed, or insecure. And instead of leaning in, some men retreat, not because you're too much, but because love is asking them to grow. And growth is painful when you've never had to confront your own heart. Today, I want to unpack a truth that might sound strange, but is backed by experience, discernment, and spiritual clarity. If he loves you, he might ignore you. Not forever, but in the moments when love stretches him beyond his comfort zone. Let's talk about it. Love will trigger his brokenness before it awakens his wholeness. This is the truth that doesn't fit into fairy tales or romance novels. It's not the part you see on Instagram or hear in love songs. But when a man comes face to face with a woman who carries purpose, who walks in confidence, who knows who she is in Christ, it shakes him. Not because she's doing anything wrong, but because love has a way of shining light in places that have been comfortable in the dark. When you step into a man's life with a heart that loves with purity, with standards, and with grace, it does something to him. It exposes the wounds he never tended to. It brings to the surface the fears he thought he had buried. The little boy in him, the one who didn't feel enough, who was abandoned, who wasn't affirmed, starts to rise up. And instead of being drawn in, he might pull away. Not because he doesn't care, but because your love is unfamiliar. It doesn't stroke his ego, it stretches his soul. And for a man who hasn't done the inner work, that kind of love feels threatening. It feels uncomfortable. It doesn't validate his dysfunction. It calls him higher. We often mistake this retreat as rejection. We take it personally. We start questioning our worth, our beauty, our value. But sis, I need you to hear me. His withdrawal isn't a verdict on your lovability. It's a reflection of his capacity. And if his capacity hasn't grown to carry the weight of real love, then he will drop it. He'll distance himself from it. He'll try to suppress it, because love doesn't just feel good. It requires responsibility. And responsibility will always challenge a man before it completes him. When God brings you into a man's life, he often does so as a mirror. A mirror to his potential, yes, but also a mirror to his pain. And when that mirror shows him parts he hasn't healed, he may not know how to respond. So don't confuse his silence with apathy. Don't interpret his withdrawal as abandonment. It could be that he's wrestling with things he never had to confront until he met you. Your presence exposed the layer. Your love challenged the mask. Your spirit stirred up the places he had tried to keep still. And if that man has never seen healthy love modeled, if he's never been taught how to process emotions, how to communicate, how to trust, then even the most beautiful love will feel like a threat. It's not because he doesn't want it. It's because he doesn't know how to receive it without first healing from what distorted his view of it. Love will stir his soul before it settles it. It will make him feel vulnerable before it makes him feel safe. And for some men, that process is too much. So they shut down, they ignore, they go quiet. Not because you broke them, but because love revealed they were already broken. And now they either step up or step back. But either way, you were never meant to dim your light just because someone else wasn't ready to walk in the glow of it. If he loves you, he will ignore you. The truth Sarah Jakes Roberts wants every woman to know. His silence may be a sign of internal struggle, not emotional absence. As women, we often interpret silence through the filter of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, fear that what we felt wasn't real. But what if his silence isn't the end of the story? What if his silence is the beginning of a battle he's trying to fight within himself? There's a kind of stillness that doesn't come from disinterest. It comes from internal war. A man can feel something so deep that it terrifies him into stillness. He can care so much that it paralyzes him. Not because he doesn't want to move toward you, but because he's not sure he can carry what your presence requires of him. A lot of men have been taught that silence is strength, that emotions make them weak, that vulnerability is something to run from, not run toward. So when love enters, when a woman shows up who doesn't just touch his body but speaks to his spirit, the fear doesn't disappear, it multiplies. Because now he knows this isn't casual. This isn't temporary. This is something holy, something weighty. And that kind of love forces a man to choose between evolution or escape. Sometimes silence becomes his only language because he doesn't yet know how to speak from a place of wholeness. He may be quiet because he's processing, because for the first time, someone is seeing him beyond his image. And if he's been living on surface level relationships, then being known deeply feels dangerous. You represent something unfamiliar, something he didn't prepare for. You didn't just see his potential. You saw the broken places too, and you didn't flinch. That kind of love is foreign to a man who has spent years covering pain with pride. So the silence isn't about you. It's about him trying to figure out who he has to become to be worthy of this kind of connection. Sometimes silence is sacred space. It's the hallway between who he was and who he's being called to become. And in that hallway, there's fear, confusion, shame, and sometimes even spiritual conviction. He may be sitting in rooms you'll never see, having conversations with God you'll never hear, wrestling with whether he's enough, whether he's ready, whether love will expose his secrets or heal them. Silence doesn't always mean he stopped caring. Sometimes it means he started waking up. You deserve clarity, absolutely. But don't confuse the delay of a man's voice with the absence of a man's heart. Some men go quiet when they realize this isn't a game. They retreat because they recognize the weight of what's in front of them. Not all silence is avoidance. Sometimes it's reflection. And in that reflection, he may be questioning everything he was taught about love, leadership, manhood, and identity. This is not an excuse for inconsistency, nor is it a license to stay in confusion. But it is a revelation that not every season of silence is meant to make you feel small. Sometimes it's a signal that love has started a deeper work, one that's happening beneath the surface, one that's pushing him to confront wounds from his father, from his past, from his own mistakes. And before he can show up for you, he may need to face things he spent his whole life avoiding. If he's struggling inside, that's not your assignment to fix. But understanding that silence may be a symptom of a soul that's under construction can release you from the lie that says you weren't worthy of words. You were never the problem. His silence isn't your shame. Sometimes love doesn't speak until healing has begun. If he loves you, he will ignore you. The truth Sarah Jakes Roberts wants every woman to know. A woman's presence can convict a man who isn't yet aligned with purpose. When God places a woman in a man's life who is walking firmly in her calling and identity, it serves as a catalyst for his own journey, whether he's ready for it or not. This kind of presence is not about forcing change, but about shining a light on the areas where he has been stagnant, distracted, or even complacent. Your very existence, your faith, your confidence, and your commitment to your own destiny can become a mirror reflecting back to him what he is not yet willing to face. Many men live in a world where they are encouraged to keep up appearances, hide their insecurities, and avoid accountability. They might be drifting through life, comfortable in routine, or stuck in unresolved pain from their past. But when a woman who is aligned with God's purpose steps into their world, it disrupts the status quo. Suddenly, the mask they wear feels heavy, and the illusion they maintain starts to crumble. Your purpose-driven life calls into question his direction, his values, and his willingness to grow. This isn't a judgment or a condemnation. It's a wake-up call. Your presence convicts because it represents what is possible when a person lives unapologetically in their truth. It's a silent but powerful message that says, I am not here to be your distraction or your comfort zone. I am here to walk with you into the fullness of who God created us to be. And for a man who hasn't taken ownership of his purpose, that can feel threatening. It exposes the gap between where he is and where he knows he should be. The challenge is that not every man is prepared for this kind of conviction. Some will shrink away, choosing to ignore or avoid the woman who reflects a higher standard. They may label her as too much or intimidating when in reality, she's just too much for their current level of readiness. But that's not a reflection of her worth. It's a reflection of their capacity. And if a man is not aligned with his purpose, your presence becomes a mirror he cannot ignore. God often uses women as spiritual anchors in the lives of men, whether as wives, partners, or friends, to bring out what is hidden and to inspire transformation. You might feel like your presence is met with resistance, but know that resistance is often the first stage of growth. Conviction rarely feels comfortable. It demands honesty, it demands change, and it demands courage. And when a man begins to sense this conviction through your life, it can create tension before it brings breakthrough. This tension, this push and pull is where faith becomes crucial. You have to stand firm in who God has called you to be without compromising for the sake of acceptance. When you do, you release the man to either step into his calling or step aside. Your presence is not meant to coddle or enable immaturity. It's meant to invite maturity. It's a call to leave behind old patterns and to embrace the difficult, sometimes uncomfortable process of growth. It's important to remember that this conviction is ultimately a work of the Holy Spirit through your life, not your efforts. You can't force a man's alignment with purpose, but you can be a living example of what it looks like to live on purpose. And that example can either motivate him to pursue his own destiny or cause him to withdraw because the contrast is too stark. You were never meant to dim your light to make someone else comfortable. When you shine authentically, you serve as both a blessing and a challenge. For the man who is willing, your presence will ignite a fire in him to become the man God created him to be. For the man who is not yet ready, your presence will convict him of what he is missing. And sometimes that conviction is the first step toward transformation. If he loves you, he will ignore you. The truth Sarah Jakes Roberts wants every woman to know. God will sometimes allow disconnection to protect divine timing. This is a hard truth to accept because as women, we naturally want to close gaps, fix things, and bring hearts back together. But love, especially the love God ordains, is not about rushing or forcing connection. It's about alignment with his perfect timing. When a man seems to pull away, when silence grows louder, it might not be rejection. It might be divine protection on your relationship, guarding you both from premature union or unresolved issues that could derail the destiny God has planned. God sees what we don't always see. He understands the seasons, the spiritual battles, and the preparation required before two people can walk together fully. Sometimes the disconnect we experience is actually a divine pause, a necessary season to grow individually, to heal wounds, and to develop clarity on purpose and identity. When we try to override this pause, we risk rushing into something incomplete, and incomplete unions often bring more pain than peace. This period of distance can be a sacred space where God is cultivating patience, faith, and discernment. It's easy to interpret absence as abandonment, but faith teaches us to trust beyond what we see or feel. God's protection sometimes looks like silence, separation, and space. He is protecting your heart from being tied to someone who isn't ready to love you fully, and he is protecting his heart from the responsibility he's not prepared to carry. In the waiting, God is also preparing you for the love you deserve. He's teaching you to rely on him first, to build your own foundation so that when the right moment arrives, you can stand strong, whole, and secure. This isn't a punishment or a setback. It's a preparation. Divine timing is never early, never late, but always perfect. And the spaces where we feel ignored or disconnected may be the very places God is working behind the scenes to align everything perfectly. Understanding this requires a spiritual perspective. It means believing that God is sovereign over relationships, that he orders steps, and that he intervenes in moments when human emotions might mislead us. When a man pulls away, your heart might scream for answers, but God whispers, wait. That waiting is a form of protection, a hedge against settling, and an invitation to trust deeper. Sometimes God's protection through disconnection is also a call to examine your own heart. It's an opportunity to ask, are you ready? Are you whole enough to receive and give love without fear or compromise? Are you walking in your calling, or are you holding on to something familiar out of loneliness or insecurity? This season of silence may be God's way of strengthening you so that when love fully arrives, it will be sustainable. It's natural to want to fill the silence with explanations, to reach out for closure, or to demand clarity. But God's divine protection invites you into rest, a rest that trusts him to handle the unknown. The silence you experience is not a void. It's a sacred space for spiritual growth, healing, and preparation. It's where faith rises above feelings and hope outlasts confusion. Remember, not every connection that God allows is meant to last forever, but every connection that God ordains is meant to teach you something essential about love, about yourself, and about his timing. So when you find yourself feeling ignored by the one you love, don't rush to fill that space. Instead, lean into the truth that God is protecting you, both in that silence. Trust that his timing is perfect and that he is working even when you cannot see it. This disconnection is not the enemy. It is often the divine steward of your future peace and joy. If he loves you, he will ignore you. The truth Sarah Jakes Roberts wants every woman to know. Real love is not about pursuit, but about preparation. We've been sold a story that love is a chase, that if a man truly loves you, he will pursue you relentlessly, prove it daily, and never let you question his intentions. But the kind of love that lasts, the love that builds kingdoms and withstands storms, is not about constant pursuit. It's about both hearts being prepared to receive and give love fully in alignment with God's purpose. Sometimes what looks like silence or distance isn't rejection. It's preparation. It's a season where both of you are being shaped, molded, and equipped to walk in the kind of love that can sustain. When God ordains a love story, he is more interested in the process than the timing. He is concerned with your readiness, your growth, and your maturity. Real love requires space to become, and it often requires waiting longer than your emotions want to. Pursuit without preparation can lead to a shaky foundation built on desire instead of destiny. So when a man pulls back, it might be because he is still in preparation, is still wrestling with his identity, his purpose, his fear. And if you rush to fill that gap, you risk skipping over critical seasons meant to strengthen the bond. Preparation means becoming whole alone before becoming whole together. It means working on your spiritual, emotional, and mental health so that when love arrives, it isn't a rescue mission, but a partnership of two complete people. And the same goes for him. A man who truly loves you will respect the preparation process, even if it means stepping back to become the man God intends him to be. Love is patient and kind. It does not force growth, but encourages it. You don't need to differentiate. This season of preparation is also an opportunity to cultivate patience and faith. It tests your trust in God's timing and your belief that what is meant for you will not pass you by. The pain of waiting can feel like silence, but it is also the soil where faith is planted and hope grows. It requires releasing control and surrendering to God's plan, even when it's hard to understand. Preparation also challenges the common misconception that love is about constant togetherness. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your future relationship is to allow space for growth, space for healing, space for clarity, space for God's purpose to unfold. Pursuit without preparation can lead to codependency or settling for less than you deserve. But when you honor the preparation season, you protect your heart and create the conditions for a love that's intentional, resilient, and grounded in truth. You deserve a love that is not only felt, but is also ready to face challenges, to walk through seasons of uncertainty, to grow alongside you without fear. And that kind of love often requires time apart to build the strength needed for the journey ahead. It's not always comfortable to wait or to experience silence, but it is necessary for transformation. When a man ignores you in this season, it may be because he's still preparing himself to love you rightly. It may be because he's learning what it means to be a man who can lead, protect, and provide, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally and spiritually. Real love demands a foundation of preparation, and that preparation is a sacred work that both of you must engage in, even if it means temporarily walking different paths. This truth frees you from the pressure to chase or fix what isn't ready. It invites you to focus on your own growth and to trust that God is shaping your love story behind the scenes. When both hearts are prepared, the love that emerges will not need to prove itself through endless pursuit. It will stand firm because it was built on a foundation of readiness, respect, and divine timing. If he loves you, he will ignore you. The truth Sarah Jakes Roberts wants every woman to know. You are not the fixer of his fear. Only God can complete what he started in him. One of the most painful lies we can believe as women is that our love, our effort, or our presence can heal a man's wounds or fix his brokenness. But the truth is, you were never meant to carry the weight of his insecurities, his fears, or his past mistakes. That is a burden reserved for God alone. You can be a source of encouragement, a reflection of God's love, and a partner in growth, but you cannot complete what only God can complete. Men come into relationships carrying battles that go beyond your reach. Wounds from their childhood, failures they haven't forgiven themselves for, fears of inadequacy, and spiritual strongholds that require divine intervention. When a man pulls away, when he seems distant or unresponsive, it's often because he's wrestling with these internal struggles. And while your love might be a light, it cannot force the healing of those deep places. Trying to fix him will only drain you and frustrate your spirit. When you attempt to fill his gaps or solve his problems, you risk losing yourself in the process. Love that heals is rooted in freedom, not captivity. It's about standing beside someone as they do the hard work of transformation, not carrying them through it. And that transformation always begins with surrender. Surrender to God's power and timing. It's important to understand that God is the ultimate healer and restorer. He knows every broken piece and every fear that holds a man back. He is the only one who can fully redeem and make whole what life has damaged. Your role is not to rescue, but to love well and to set healthy boundaries that protect your heart. Love without boundaries is not love, it's codependency. And God calls us to love in a way that honors both ourselves and the other person. You must learn to release the burden of fixing and instead embrace faith that God is working behind the scenes. Sometimes that means waiting while he fights his battles in prayer, counseling, or soul searching. Sometimes it means loving from a distance, allowing space for God to do what only he can do. This is an act of trust, not defeat. There's freedom in realizing that your value does not depend on how much you can change or help someone else. Your worth is intrinsic, defined by who you are in Christ, not by what you can do for a man. When you accept this truth, you protect your peace and create space for God's perfect work to unfold. Trying to fix a man's fear or brokenness yourself often leads to frustration, because true healing requires divine intervention and personal willingness. A man has to choose to let God in and do the work of restoration. No amount of love or effort from you can replace that choice. Your job is to be prayerful, patient, and purposeful in how you engage. Encourage growth, but never enable avoidance. Stand strong in your identity, and don't settle for less than the love that God has designed for you, a love that comes from two whole people walking in freedom and grace. Remember, love that lasts is never built on the foundation of fixing, but on the foundation of faith in God's power to complete what He began. When you trust that God is the healer, you release yourself from unhealthy burdens and make room for a love that is truly transformative.